So Tina can't be with us today. She has a board meeting that she had to attend, and Kathy had another meeting that conflicted with this one. So Tina asked me to run the meeting today as the secretary. So I'm going to do that and go through the agenda. I do think we'll probably have fairly light attendance today because of APCO this week, but hopefully those who are missing today will be able to watch the recording afterwards and catch up for the next time. Excuse me just a moment. Whenever they mow the yard outside, it kicks up my allergies. So I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 10:02. As I said earlier, we don't do roll call. Instead, we have a sign-in sheet just because of the number of people who participate in these calls. So I'm going to put the link in chat again because I think after you join, you can't see chat messages that went out before you joined the call. So I'm going to put that in chat again. Please do sign in sometime today so that we can have a good, accurate head count of who was all on the call. Next item is project update, and we have Tracy. Tracy, do you have any updates or information for us?
I do. We can go ahead and run through them real quick. So at Shriver, the site survey was complete, and I talked with Wes yesterday. Right now, that location is on hold. It's due to some cost issues that are between the Air Force Base and Lumen. So Wes is on top of that. It's just a matter of funding for Shriver. Buckley is still continuing to work with the Aurora to ensure, again, how that's going to move forward. I think on your sheet, let's see, Shriver, the Cheyenne Mountain routing to El Paso is still in the works. It's moving a little slower than Wes had hoped, but it is, it's still moving forward. So we're working on that one. Let me see what you got on this.
On the Cheyenne Mountain one, do you know is El Paso taking over their concurrent sessions, or are those concurrent sessions going to be retired? Do you know what's going to happen with those? Did I lose you?
Sorry. Right now they are going to pass through. I honestly don't know. I'd have to check with Wes to see what the long-term decision is on that one.
Okay.
And he'll probably hop on a little bit late today. So if we want to table that for the first half, and if he jumps on and has more information than what he sent out to us yesterday, we can do that. Okay,
that's fine. Thank you.
Let me look at your tracker here. So the top one, the ESInet migration, that's not really an issue or a project, but it's something I didn't want to forget about today. And it's part of that PDF that I sent to you, Daryl.
Okay.
We had some questions come up outside of this meeting as well as last month about what happens when you guys now have someone ready to go from CAMA to SIP. So we went ahead and defined that process in the PDF that I sent over to you.
Okay.
I don't know if you have that handy. We could go through it real quick.
I do, yeah. Let me pull that up.
I just didn't want to forget to talk about it, so I put it on this particular sheet so that we could go through it real quick.
And if anybody else wants to see it, I put it in the meeting folder for today. So if you go to the ESInet web page, it's under the meeting folder labeled 2022-08-10.
And I mean, it's really simple and straightforward. It was just a good time for us to put out a little reminder, share this with you guys, share it with all the PSAPs, just, you know, kind of what's going to kick off this project as it moves forward. So basically, right, the PSAP's going to notify Lumen of the request to do this conversion. Lumen would need to get the purchase order from the PSAP. And along with the email request and purchase order, we need to know what to do with the ring no answer, how you guys want that to work, alternate and default routing points, as well as the date that you would like this to begin. So let's say you want it in place October 3rd. We'd like to have that on the request as well. Once we get all of that information, it would be Lumen, probably Vicky, that would send the RG29 request form over to Intrado. And then the Intrado team would begin to work the process on their end. They do an upgraded network diagram, which is returned to you guys. They'll provide the URIs, work with us and the PSAP to schedule testing, you know, the new SIP URIs, discuss converting the traffic, doing the traffic study, and then actually making the transition. So it's just a matter of, you know, initially getting what we need via email is perfectly fine. And then we'll kick off the process with Intrado. And again, it's not an issue. We just wanted to throw it out there because it did come up of, you know, what do I do? How do I make this happen? So we just thought we'd put it out there as more of these start to come up.
So just to clarify for myself and for the other people on the call, this is what we're talking about. What we're talking about here is for PSAPs that are on the ESInet now, but they're on it with a legacy PSAP gateway.
Yes.
Or PSAP gateway module, I think is what you guys call it in the tariff.
Yes.
And they want to switch to receiving their calls in SIP format.
Yes, sir.
Do you know where that $4,800 price tag came from? Was that based on any sort of analysis that can be shared?
It came from Wes in discussions that took place about a year before I came to the team. So they did go back, and I don't know if Tim is on, but he was part of the conversations too. And Cindy Berry had notes that had been discussed. I don't know who from the state were part of those discussions because I wasn't with Lumen, but I can find out. I do know it came from conversations from 2021 and emails. And Tim, do you happen to be on? Okay.
Yeah, I am on. That was something we worked with Intrado on, and so that was what the price that they told us, and that was what we incorporated into the letter that Tim Goodwin had sent to this group. Yeah, over a year ago, right? Probably almost 2 years ago, I guess now. So that was the cost that we were told it would be to do that, and we had agreed to waive it for 2 years.
Okay.
It passed.
Yeah, and you and I may need to talk offline about whether that needs to be in the tariff somewhere, because it is a fairly significant charge related to basic emergency service.
Okay.
But I'm not prepared to talk more about it today. Anybody else on the call, specifically if you're a PSAP with that's currently using the PSAP gateway module, do you have any questions or comments about this process as outlined by Tracy?
Short and sweet.
Okay.
Like I said, I'll take this off the issue tracker. I just didn't want to forget to talk about it today, so I figured that was the best place to put it.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy.
You bet. I don't know if there's anything else on there or not. Let's see. So ESInet. So we do have some updates over there in current activity. The Grand Junction. I'm going to open my copy just because it's a little bit bigger for my eyes here. So on the Grand Junction had reported to us that they were getting some calls that should have been going to Cheyenne, and I think they got one that should have went to Nevada. So Vicki is actually working with Jennifer on that, and they're going to go ahead and submit the tickets, you know, the way we're supposed to into 911 Net, so that Intrado can begin investigating those for us.
Okay.
And it's kind of the same situation with the Denver Metro. I know that Vicki has been working through some of those that Kimberly Culp had sent in. We've talked to the associated carriers so that they can update their routing tables. She still has a few of them that are under investigation. And then Kimberly, I don't know if you have recent ones that are still coming through that Vicki can, you know, continue to track and follow up on, or if those have stopped or, you know, become fewer and fewer. I don't think she's heard of anything new recently. And I don't know if Kimberly is on.
I do not see her on the call. She might be at APCO.
We have, you know, like I said, Vicki's on it. She's working with Intrado. The process is the same for any misroute. You know, you open up the ticket and then we'll work with Intrado and investigate it and try to find out what happened. So we're definitely staying on top of that. I slowed down a little bit, I think, because Vicki was out, but she's back in full swing and ready to go. So that's great news. Line 5 on here, the Alley project, that's actually complete. I confirmed that the team has worked with Intrado and all the PSAPs, and we no longer have the Alley project open.
Very nice.
Yeah, and we already talked about Shriver Air Force Base and Buckley. So I think unless there's anyone online that has open tickets or issues that I haven't been made aware of. Those are the only ones I know about, but if I need to add some items to this, I certainly can.
Well, about Buckley and Cheyenne Mountain, I do see some people from DISA on the line. Does anyone from DISA or those bases have any questions or comments?
No question or comments at this point. And she said, Schriever, they're sorting through the funding question that kind of popped up with Buckley. I know Buckley's talking to Aurora, and then Cheyenne is effectively going to be a backup to Peterson. So they're not going to have their own on-site call handling as they did in the past, but they're still working that out. They need to get some circuits ordered from Lumen. I think those circuits are in place. I think they're still working on the connectivity and standing that solution up. So.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Anything else, Tracy?
No.
All right. Before we go on to old business, I got an update from Wes. Wes said he had a medical appointment today. Tracy, did you say you thought he was going to be able to join us late?
He wasn't sure. He was going to try.
Okay.
But yeah, he did provide some updates for us. I think what he sent over, the misroutes are what Vicky's working on. We touched on Schreiber was one of his updates, as well as Buckley, which I think we already chatted about.
Mm-hmm.
I think the last two items that he sent in, that Tim is going to be able to cover if Wes doesn't join.
Okay. So one thing Wes did say in his email update to me was that you have a diagram which he believes will address the question that Kimberly with Lita raised a few meetings ago. So do you have a diagram of the network that would meet the request from Kimberly?
I do not. And I pinged Wes this morning and I said, no, I have a presentation on the CAMA to SIP. I'm not sure what the diagram is.
Okay.
I pinged Cindy Berry as well. And what I can do, guys, is let me get with Cindy after this call and Wes and find out which network flow diagram he was asking for. I think it's probably one that it's just like the ESInet routing is my guess. But I did not get that sent to me. So I owe you guys that hopefully by the end of today.
Okay.
And then we can discuss it on the next call.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. So old business, proposed tariff amendment. Tim Kunkelman.
Hey, everybody. So I apologize for all the starts and stops on this. We kept kind of going back and forth on going to add the text to it. We had just the ECAS ready, then we were going to add text, then we decided not to, then we decided to. So we're back to we're not going to add any text to it. It is ready to go. I gave the green light this morning to our tariff filing group to make the filing. The filing is all ready. So I'm just waiting to hear back. I haven't got a confirmation yet of when they will make that filing. I'm hoping that it'll be this week. However, it certainly should be before the 18th, which the reason for that date is that's the comment deadline for the surcharge proceeding. And so I do want to make sure that that gets in before then. I think I will still file comments for the purpose of informing the commission about this filing, just to reiterate that it was made and that it would be our opinion and belief that the surcharge should remain where it's at. I do intend, just to kind of add on to this, I do intend, though, to add in those comments that we are still looking at text and we are still looking at GIS. I think the thing that would be different about both of those is those will be more on a ICB kind of ad hoc basis, so not a service that is charged to all the customers, like the ESInet and like what the ECATs will be. And so I know that they probably won't do anything with that information in terms of raising the surcharge, but I think at least that will give them the cover to maintain it. And I hope that will be helpful to folks, because I do believe that at least by first quarter of next year, it would be available for folks to buy if they so chose. And we're working on the notion of statewide pricing for those two services, even though we know that it won't be a statewide purchase. And in the case of GIS, it may even be, you know, well over a year with folks being in other contracts and things of that nature. So those are the plans going forward for amendments to the tariff. So ECAT should be imminent. And then, like I said, I will write some comments to inform the commission about the other two services, and hopefully I'll have at least some notion of a price point that we may suggest, again, to just help inform them of what to do with the current surcharge. So that is what I have. If there's any questions, I'm happy to take those.
So I do think, Tim, that it's a good idea for you to do the comments in addition to filing the tariff, since those would be two separate proceedings. That'll be a good way to get that information into the surcharge rate proceeding for the commission to consider.
Okay, great.
And I would assume that would also include the additional pricing increase for the ECATs.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Put that. Yep.
Great.
So again, apologies for the delay on that. So thanks for being patient with us. I'm sorry it's August and it's finally being done.
The speed of corporations.
Yeah, that's right.
We used to talk about the speed of government. Now it's the speed of corporations. Jackie, do you have your hand up?
Yes. So I just wanted to verify, Tim, that the numbers you kind of mentioned, that's about where it's going to fall, or is it going to be different on ECATs?
Yeah. So ECATs, the price, the proposed price is going to be per concurrent session of $64.08.
Great. That's what I have. Thank you.
And I also wanted to point out, we have scheduled a webinar. It's a 1-hour webinar from 11 to noon on Monday. That's next Monday, the 15th, for Lumen to essentially, or not Lumen, it's going to be Intrado, I think, doing a presentation on what will be included in the ECATS package that is being offered through the tariff. Did I get that right, Tim?
Yes, you did.
So if you're interested on what all would be included, what reports, what features would be and services would be included as part of the ECATS package that Lumen is preparing to offer through a tariff amendment, that would be your chance to find out. And I did send that invite out to the full task force, as well as my PSAP and 911 authority list. If you did not get it, let me know if you're interested, and I will add you directly to the meeting invite. Any questions for Tim? All right, and I think we've covered Wes isn't here, but I think we've covered the text 911 and spatial call routing with Tim's update. Tracy, any more information on the area code overlay?
Yeah, we're still moving forward with that. As everybody knows, the date was June 17th that the new area code could be used. I don't know if anyone has used it yet. We weren't out of other numbers, so we're moving forward with that.
So are we still in the permissive period then?
Yep. Yeah. Fremont and Durango were with Converge One, and we can take them off the list. We did do some testing, and they're doing the 10-digit, so that's good news. Refino, we haven't gotten, not necessarily a hold of them, but a way to go in and tell within their CPE if they're doing 8 digits. I don't know if we're not looking in the right place, or we're not talking to the right people. But that is the one PSAP that Cindy and I have not been able to confirm that they're doing the 10 digits. DIA, we have been in contact with them, and we're working with them. I think there was actually, Tina helped us get in touch with some people, that are at DIA to help us. They are working internally because it does look like they will need to update CPE equipment. They're trying to see if there's a workaround, but thus far, between everybody involved, we haven't found one. The question with DIA is, I believe they're just a transfer PSAP, so that's part of why I don't know that it's as urgent, but we definitely want to try to continue to work with them and get some updated equipment out there, because from what we've been able to tell, the equipment they have will not do the 10 digits.
Okay. And on Wherefino, I understand they've had a change in management recently, and I think they might be between managers right now. So
okay,
that might be part of why you're having trouble getting a hold of them. I see, I think I see Connie. Connie Johnson, are you on the line?
Okay.
Yes, I am.
If you are able to get a updated contact for Werfeno, would you send that to me and I can forward it on to Tracy?
I will be happy to do that. I need to talk to them again about some other things, so I was going to have that on my list today.
Okay.
That
Yeah,
would be great.
I called them a couple weeks ago and they weren't able to give me a contact for who was in charge of the 911 operations there, but maybe that's changed since then.
And like they might be fine. We just don't know. We need to get somebody in there and test it and see. So that's the only one really in question. We'll work with DIA as much as we can, and I think we'll be good.
And you've already given us the update on the alley hardware.
Yep.
It is complete, so we can probably remove this item from the agenda for the future. I'll just make a note to myself. Next item was letter to Lumen requesting clarification on default routing. So Tim, are you still on the line? Yes, you are. So I sent you a letter a couple weeks, or well, it was actually about a month ago or a month and a half ago, requesting clarification on how default routing on the ESInet works. And I don't know if you've had a chance to work on that at all or put together something for us as a response.
Yeah, I've been doing some work with some folks internally, but I don't have anything back to offer to the group yet.
Okay. But we'll keep that on the agenda and check back in with you next time. Next time was NG911 strategic plan. So I sent out a draft, and then I sent out another a updated version of the draft after I got some feedback on it. I think it's in pretty good shape now, and I haven't gotten any more feedback on it in the last couple of weeks. What I had hoped to do today was to ask Tina to call for a vote of the voting members of the ESInet users group. I don't know that we have enough people on the line to do that. So what I talked to Tina about doing, if we didn't have enough people on the line, was sending out a request for a vote by email to everybody, maybe ask for a response by next week, to let me know if you approve the next generation 911 strategic plan in the form that it currently exists. Which, if you want to see it, if you still haven't seen it, you can also go to the ESInet users group webpage, and I actually have a folder for it now on under committee documents, NG911 strategic plan, and there is the current draft right there. I'll go ahead and pull that up. So I wanted to see if anybody had any thoughts or comments on that. If you think that it would be acceptable for me to go ahead and send out a request for a vote from each 911 authority on whether they approve the strategic plan or not. Again, this is considered a living document, so it may not be exactly where we need it to be. The idea is this is our first draft, and then we'll be doing revisions of it every year going forward to make it better. But the idea is to give us a general idea of where the ESInet users group and where the stakeholders for 911 would like to see next generation 911 go as far as implementation in the future, and a basic timeline of how we're going to get there, as well as some other considerations like funding and implementation options, and a description of our current next generation 911 implementation. And we can update that as we add new features and services like ECAT or geospatial routing support or things like that. So I want to stop there and see if anybody has any comments on the Next Gen 911 strategic plan, or any thoughts on whether it would be appropriate to send out an email to all of the voting members asking for a vote. Matt?
I think that'd be a great idea.
Okay. And there's more of Matt's words in that document now than mine. But his are the accurate ones. If there are any errors, they're mine.
I don't know about that, but I do approve it.
Anyone else? All right, well, I will take silence as consent, and I will send out an email before the end of this week asking all of the voting members of the ESInet users group to vote on this. I'm hoping that I have an up-to-date list of the voting members at this point, because this is the first vote we've actually had as the ESInet user group. Everything else has been dealt with simply by consensus at the meetings. So if you are a voting member and you don't get a email from me by the end of this week asking to vote on this, then that means I did not have your contact information as the voting member for your 911 authority. So email me and let me know that you didn't get it, and I will include you in that. But I'm hoping that the list I have is up to date enough to do this. All right, next item is requesting location-based routing from T-Mobile statewide. So to recap where we're at on this, T-Mobile started offering location-based routing in 2019, but the PSAP, each individual PSAP had to request it. I reached out at the direction of the ESInet users group. I reached out to T-Mobile to see if they would allow us to do it statewide if the ESInet users group requests it. And they said, sure, you just need to fill out this form. And that's what I'm bringing back to you today. I want you to let me know how you want me to proceed on this. So let me stop sharing this and start sharing the form so you can see what the form looks like. And some of you probably have already seen this form. I know, Jeff, I think you're going through this right now for Jefferson County. So some of you may not be affected by this, but those who have not done this yet might be affected by it. Let me zoom in a little. So the form is really designed for an individual PSAP to fill out. I asked them, I said, do we need to fill out a separate form for each PSAP, or can we fill it out statewide? And they said, well, yeah, you can just put all the PSAPs in one form. I think that would be a very long form, and it would be very confusing because you have PSAP authority in the first field, PSAP name and FCC ID in the second field. So how would you match those two together? And will the PSAP be conducting any testing during the enablement? Well, if we're asking for it as the ESInet users group and the PSAPs aren't necessarily asking for it directly, I think that kind of question gets problematic. So a question I have for you today, and here's another one where it asks for emergency contacts. Will emergency contacts for each PSAP, or they want emergency contacts statewide? In which case, I don't know that I'm really authorized to do that on behalf of all of the PSAPs of the state. So one of the questions I have for you today is if the group thinks that maybe it would be better if instead of doing this statewide, I send this form out to every PSAP in the state and encourage them to fill it out for themselves. And I see, Jeff, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I think the fallacy, Daryl, is that they're then going to request shapefiles for each PSAP or ECC service area. So, that's what we are going to have to provide them. So I don't know if you'd want to do that for a statewide or ECC by ECC basis.
And you are right. They did mention that as well. And I don't have shapefiles for all of the PSAPs. I don't think I have shapefiles for any of the PSAPs, except maybe for a couple on the Western Slope that sent them to me. So being able to provide that would be very difficult. Joe, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I think that would probably be more appropriate on a statewide basis if it was a state-run 911 system. I think I would expect that we're going to have to provide some PSAPs assistance, just like we've had to with text to 911. And will all PSAPs have shapefiles?
I hope so, but there's no guarantee. There may be some PSAPs that don't have their own shapefiles.
Will we have a way of helping them if they don't?
Maybe. In some cases, their shapefile may just be the county boundary, but when it's not, that's when it becomes problematic. Jackie, you have your hand up?
I do, thank you. Include me on the form. I've been working on this as well. But I think that if you have a list of cell sites, that's all you probably need, which T-Mobile has for each jurisdiction, whether they have any mapping or not. And so I would suggest that if in lieu of shape files, to go back to T-Mobile and say, for those you need to help, that just send in their cell sites.
Well, I think the problem is that even if they have the cell site, if the cell site potentially covers more than one PSAP service area, they need to know where the boundary is between those two PSAP service areas.
True, but maybe if they had surrounding boundaries, they wouldn't have to worry about it. For the ones you
Right.
don't.
If they know what their neighbor's shapefile looks like, they can use that.
Right.
Joe, you have your hand up?
Yeah, can you scroll down on this document? I thought it had a question there about where cell sectors are may go into different areas. Was that the audit review update cell sector based routing?
Yeah, Joe, that's
Probably.
if you want to check out all of your current routing sheets. Make sure they're okay.
And that should probably be coordinated between the PSAP serving different areas. What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, all of this should be. I mean, if a PSAP says this area is mine and calls in this area should come to my PSAP, we should make sure that the neighboring PSAP agrees with that. But luckily, these PSAP boundaries don't move that often. So
we're going to need these PSAP boundaries for other things in the relatively near future. This might be a lever that we can pull to help encourage people to start developing them if they don't already have them. And then resolve discrepancies in their boundary versus their neighbors' boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been working on a process on the GIS committee on a process for resolving boundary disputes?
We have not.
I've been told there are some counties that have disputed their boundaries between different counties since the state was established.
Yep, that's correct. In fact, Montrose and Uray counties in the state constitution and in other state documents have two different versions of their boundaries, and no one has seen fit to adjudicate the difference, either amending the state constitution or somehow otherwise. So, but setting that aside, there are other cases around the state like that. Historically, with Intrado, the PSAPs and authorities have sorted out their VoIP PSAP boundaries, and Intrado has sort of managed that process for their purposes. And I foresee that we may end up with a similar process through Intrado with GeoMSAG service. And so it may self-resolve over time. And in the meantime, I think we encourage everyone to be diligent on their own in advance.
So would Intrado be a source of boundaries to provide to T-Mobile?
I don't know if Intrado is willing to share that data.
Is there anyone from Intrado on the line? Anyone? And if they're not willing to share that data, I wonder if they're willing to sell that data. Then we'll just have to come up with a way to pay for it.
It might be an okay starting point, but ultimately the authorities will be responsible for what they provide for NG911 or GeoMSAG interim service.
Sure.
And a good place to start is the geographic sum of your wireline or landline boundaries, provided that that is the same as your overall, and then any differences you may have for wireless phase 2 or VoIP routing.
Matt, before I send this out to all of the PSAPs, because it sounds like that's the direction we're headed, I think I'm going to contact you offline and see what we should be prepared to assist PSAPs with if they need it in terms of shapefiles. Sounds good. I know we can't build those shapefiles for them, but we might be able to point them in the right direction or answer some questions for them.
OIT, state OIT GIS might be a resource. There are certainly vendors out there who can also help with such things, or your neighboring jurisdictions that are willing to lend a hand. But yeah, I'd be happy to talk.
Sounds good. Jeff, I don't know if you have your hand up from before or, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think so. Hey, Daryl, before we move off this topic, I just wanted to ask, you know, in the midst of all the media stuff that was going on last week around this topic and the seeming rhetoric, I felt like I was entering the Twilight Zone when they were talking about, you know, the responsibility of authorities versus, you know, location-based routing and what have you. It might be good just to talk a little bit about that to see if we can get some clarity.
Sure. So what Jeff's talking about is there was a shooting in Denver. I'm sure most of you are probably aware of it, but in case you weren't, there was a shooting in Denver. Was this just like 3 weeks ago? I don't have the exact date.
Like it was last week.
Maybe it just seems like a long time ago. Some of the 911 calls related to the shooting, because the shooting occurred at a location that's in Denver, but it's close to the border with the city of Aurora. Some of the wireless calls went to Aurora's 911 center instead of Denver's. From the information that I have heard, that did not impact response time, but there were people that were upset that their calls went to the wrong 911 center to begin with. So that started a conversation in the media about location-based routing, because it's something that AT&T provides right now. I believe they've already turned that on in Colorado. T-Mobile provides it upon request, and it's something that Denver has already requested, as well as City of Aurora, so that wasn't a problem for T-Mobile users either. But Verizon customers were routed to the wrong PSAP because Verizon is still using cell sector-based routing, and I understand there was also a misprogrammed cell sector routing issue involved with this as well. So that started a long conversation in the media about location-based routing, who's responsible for it. There is no requirement at the federal level or the state level that wireless companies route their 911 calls based on location. The FCC recently did a public notice asking for comment on the issue, which sometimes is a signal that they are planning on doing a rulemaking in the near future. But they have not said that they're doing a rulemaking yet. So as of right now, there is no federal or state mandate that wireless carriers do that. However, based on this story and possibly the fact that the FCC was looking to do a rulemaking to begin with, Verizon has recently announced that they will start doing location-based routing starting in the first half of 2023. But one of the things that got brought into this conversation was whether there should be, whether that's the responsibility of wireless carriers or whether there should be up to state and local 911 authorities, because that's what Verizon was saying originally as their reason for not wanting to do location-based routing, is they think it should be up to state and local authorities. What they're talking about is implementation of next generation 911 and geospatial routing. Because if we had full next generation 911 in Colorado with geospatial routing, we wouldn't need the wireless companies to do a location-based routing on their side of the 911 call flow. It would be done on the after the call is received into the 911 network by Lumen. And that's one of the reasons why we need to clean up our GIS data statewide, because before we can even contemplate implementing geospatial routing in Colorado, we need a statewide GIS data set that is robust enough and has the right data sets and layers for next generation 911 and 911 call routing. So that's where we're at on that. Whether we can get there under our current tariff or not, I think is a good question. One of the things that I think a lot of you are already aware of is the 911 Advisory Task Force has a legislative committee that is looking at a bill that would create a 911 services enterprise that could serve to be a funding source for statewide projects like a GIS data development project for next generation 911. So that might also be a path forward, but that bill is currently being considered, but the task force is not committed to moving forward with that bill yet. So I don't know what the fate of that bill will be. Joe, you have your hand up?
Yeah, even with the current device-based hybrid location technologies that T-Mobile and AT&T are using and Verizon will be using, there are situations where they won't have sufficient location information in a sufficient time to do routing based on the device location, and they'll still be routing based on tower location. And depending on who you read information from in FCC comments, it's in some cases it's a relatively low number of calls that are device based routing. And Brett has also seen, and I've read in different accounts of situations, that it appears that if a cell tower is saturated and handling all the calls it can, handsets will connect through towers that are located further away. And in those cases, you'll also get misrouted calls.
So I don't know what the percentage of calls are that have to be default routed instead of location-based routed in AT&T's network or T-Mobile, where they have location-based routing turned on. I do know that it's improved over recent years. The first time to fix, which is what they call it, how long it takes to get a latitude and longitude of a caller on a wireless call, has improved significantly, but I don't know what that percentage is exactly. On your other issue of it going to another cell tower that's further away, I think if they're routing based on latitude and longitude of the caller, it should still go to the right PSAP. But if they have to do default routing because they don't get a fix from the device quick enough, that might still cause a problem. And Matt, you have your hand up if you want to add on to that, because we're reaching the limits of my knowledge on this topic.
You both have great takeaways. I would just add, from the big picture, location-based routing is not a panacea fix. It should be part of everyone's public messaging.
And I did listen to so Denver has a podcast. There's a Denver City podcast that did a story on this, and they actually, the reporter from Denver Post they were interviewing actually was, included that nuance that location-based routing is not going to be 100%, even if it's enacted by all of the wireless carriers, just because of the nature of the technology. Jackie, you have your hand up.
So I was going to bring this up later too, just out of curiosity. It is very true that cell sites, if they're busy, will start bouncing calls, and they will bounce them a long distance. And currently, I'm working on a cell site that's been receiving in Parker, 27 miles away at least, has been receiving calls from 27 miles away on a consistent basis. We haven't been able to track that down. So my question to this group and to maybe Lumen, is there any way to track this down in the ESInet? Could there be something going on in the ESInet? Should we report it through you as well as through the wireless carriers? Because we can't figure out what's going on with it.
Anyone from Lumen want to comment on that?
I mean, we would be happy to look at it for you. The way it would get to us is the same way you would report like a misroute. I believe it goes to Intrado first to the 911 net, and then that comes to us. We also, Vicki and I have access to 911 net now. So if you would report it as you would a standard misroute, we would have the details and then the tracking to go back and look at it along with Intrado. I don't think we would pull in a wireless carrier, but you might as well have everyone look at it so we can figure out what's going wrong, especially if it's not just occasionally, right? Like we mentioned, that you're going to have this happen just because of the way wireless works. But if it's often, then it might be something that, I mean, would be worth us looking at.
Okay, I'll make sure I go to the proper routes and get it to you.
Yeah, and if you want to copy me on that too, I don't log into 911 net as often as some of my counterparts do. But if I know it's there, I'll definitely pull in Cindy and Wes and Vicki and we'll look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So Jackie, you've done this a lot more than I have, I think, but so requesting the call routing sheets from the wireless carrier doesn't help resolve the issue?
The site is routing properly to Parker. but it's receiving calls from the downtown Denver area on a regular basis.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and like I said, I've reported it to the Verizon NOC, and they're working on it, but they can't figure it out, so I don't know what's going on. Like I said, and if it were 1 or 2 calls, as I've told the PSAP, oh, it's just, you know, it got busy and found the site somehow. But it's consistently happening week after week. A lot. So
interesting.
Yep, let us look at it.
Okay, thank you, Tracy.
Sure.
Yeah, and Jackie, I'd be interested in hearing an update on that if you find out what's happening.
Sure, I'll keep everybody posted.
And I see Andrew Dameron, or I thought I saw Andrew Dameron. Is he still here? No, he's not. Okay. Because I was talking about Denver 911 in the third person. I was going to give him a chance to speak as well. But so it sounds like the direction that we need to go is that I will send this form out to all of the PSAPs and 911 authorities in the state, because sometimes it might be the 911 authority doing it, and sometimes it might be the PSAP doing it. PSAP or 911 authority in the state, with an encouragement that they do request location-based routing from T-Mobile. I will get with Matt ahead of time to put together a game plan, and if they have questions about how they get the shape files, if they don't have shape files available to send to T-Mobile to help them implement this. And I think that's it. So does anybody have any comments on that approach? Do you think that a different approach would be better, or do you approve of that approach? And once again, I will take silence as consent. All right. So what else did we have on the agenda? I'll go ahead and put this back up, even though we're almost done. So we have nothing listed under new business unless anybody has anything they'd like to add. Okay, open discussion. These are concerns from the PSAPs, I'd say, and 911 authorities or 911 authorities to Lumen regarding ESInet. Anybody have anything that fits that description? All right, and then the other direction, we have open issues from Lumen to the PSAPs that need immediate action or follow-up. Anything from Lumen?
I'm good. Just Connie was going to get back to us on the new contact.
Right.
Yep, that's all I have.
If Connie's able to get it, because like I said, I called them and they couldn't give me a contact yet because they were
still in transition. Yeah, I've reached out a couple of times too, so we'll just keep on it and get it as soon as we can.
Sounds good. And then we are on to public comment. Any non-voting members are welcome to provide comments during this portion of the meeting. Any non-voting members with comments? And I would still keep it open for any voting members who have comments who just haven't spoken up yet. All right, well, with that, I'm going to call the meeting adjourned at 10:50 a.m. Hopefully everyone can join us for the ECATS webinar on Monday. That will also be recorded, so if you can't attend, I'll be putting it up on the task force website. If you need a link to, or the task force's YouTube channel, if you need a link to that, just send me an email and I'll send you the link. Everybody have a good rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.